Hello, everyone, and welcome to DPLA's member webinar series. This is Samantha Gibson, and I work on communications at DPLA. In today's webinar, you'll hear from DPLA staff and our partners with an overview of our ebooks projects and how we're working together to expand access through collaboration. Before we get started, a few housekeeping reminders. First, to make sure that we're coming through loud and clear, can you type a quick hello into the chat box? Great, seeing lots of greetings. Second, a reminder that everyone will be muted throughout the session, but please do use the chat box to post questions at any time. We will leave time for a Q&A at the end. And finally, the session is being recorded and we'll make that available for reference and for anyone who is unable to attend. We have a number of presenters today, so I'll introduce them in the order that you'll hear from them. Executive Director John Bracken will kick us off, followed by ebooks consultant Micah May. Then you'll hear from Tony Age from New York Public Library, who has stepped in for Luke Swarthout, Michael Blackwell from St. Mary's County Library, and Valerie Horton from Minitex. And finally, Michelle Kimpton from DPLA will wrap us up and moderate the Q&A. So to start us off, I'll hand it over to John.
Thank you, Samantha. Good afternoon to everyone. Good morning to those of you still in morning mode. It's really exciting for all of us here at DPLA to see so many of you here. I'm excited for us and for my colleagues and our partners to share with you what we've been working on and more importantly, to share with you routes for you to be part of this with us. I've heard a lot of interest in our ebooks work, which has been sort of nascent and bubbling for a little more than a year now. And I'm really excited to begin to turn the corner and really turn up the volume, turn up the temperature, and turn up the opportunities for engagement and partnership. For us at DPLA, the work around building a digital solution for libraries around ebooks is core to our mission of ensuring that libraries and other cultural institutions are at the forefront as we're building our digital future, as we're building the mechanisms for sharing, creating, and consuming knowledge in digital formats. And to do that in such a way that we as a sector are at the table, are building the tools themselves and are part of building those practices. So this is a really exciting moment for us. Thank you all for being here. There are a handful of people that I want to highlight and entities that we wouldn't be here were it not for them. Our founding funder is Sloan Foundation, which has made the commitment to enable the work that you're going to hear about. The project that you're going to be hearing about from Micah and Michelle on our team and from our partners was started by New York Public Library. They're the founding partner of what we're going to be talking about, and we wouldn't be here without their efforts. LYRASIS has been a co-pilot of ours, especially over the last year and a half as we've really turned up the work. And you're going to hear from a couple of our core, you're going to hear from two of our key library partners, but in addition to Minitex, which has been a core partner to us in lots of areas of our work, including our cultural heritage work. Khalifa and Amigos are consortia that we've been working with very closely as core partners in this work. And lastly, I want to thank Samantha, you yourself. We wouldn't be doing this meeting were it not for her and her efforts to pull this together. So thank you. And with that, I am going to pass the mic to Micah May.
Great, thank you, John. And Samantha, you can probably click us forward. So I want to share with you all the work that I've been doing for the last 2 and a bit years at DPLA, but as John said, really started before that when I was in New York Public Library. Many of us on this project have had some connection because this work really started with a grant in 2012 called Library Simplified to do what the grant said, make the library experience simpler and better for ebook borrowers, focusing initially primarily on public libraries. But recognizing that there were opportunities to improve access that spanned academic and school libraries as well. And so that work has been all about delivering ebooks to library patrons through an experience that is simpler and easier to use. The goal was to get all of the library's patrons to all of the library's ebooks in one place in 3 clicks or less. And SimplyE basically does that in 2 now. So we're really thrilled that that has been accomplished. And as part of that effort, explore the larger goal of building a library-driven ebook platform that could deliver a library-owned ebook experience, branded by the library, controlled by the library with regard to privacy settings, with regard to security in every way, also with regard to the overall patron experience and what books would be put on the library's digital shelves. And so that was the goal, and it has evolved through, since then as a project that has included many partners. The LEAP grant in 2015 brought together partners, and DPLA was one of the core partners in that, to really evaluate different ways we could go after this. And in between, Minitex, Valerie, who's presenting, was part of another IMLS project to look at academic and school use cases and add functionality that could move it towards pilots in that direction. So it's been a broad effort, and I think it's broadening even more. And the piece that was missing as of late 2016, as the LEAP project looked into building this whole national digital platform, was the marketplace for libraries to buy ebooks, and for ebooks to be the licenses that drive how libraries buy ebooks to be negotiated by a nonprofit directly with publishers, the business link between the library community and publishers. So in the beginning of 2017, with a gift from the Sloan Foundation, a grant from the Sloan Foundation, we were able to start the first pilot phase of launching the DPLA Exchange, which is the last of 3 components of this library-driven stack that you'll be hearing about from me. Probably a little more technical than some people want, but for me, this is about technology. It's about technology that libraries own so they can do a better job of getting ebooks to their users more simply and in one place. So we have over 300,000 titles now available. We have new licensing models offered on a number of those titles, which we're getting just by asking for them, for asking for something better. So consumable and perpetual licenses on the same books. We are free to continue to serve libraries without any additional constraints on that service coming from distributors. So one of the most important examples has been the ability of libraries to share more broadly than is otherwise generally allowed. So supporting libraries to share books between even academic, public, and school libraries. All of this is interoperable, and that's what's powerful about it. Libraries can use different parts of this system in different ways if they want to. Things are basically all in your control as a library using this system that never were. And I think we're only beginning to scratch the surfaces of how that can benefit libraries and their users. One of those benefits, which you see in the probably too small screenshot, is the open bookshelf, where DPLA has hired a curation core of paid librarians to help us review metadata for the best open books, open high quality EPUBs. And so in this space as well, we're trying to bring together and curate the best open books so that those can be free in libraries, which is the case through this. So Samantha, if you could step forward to the next page. This is a slide which, again, is very technical in some ways, but I can't talk about this or think about it without thinking about the technology behind it. So I apologize to those of you that don't find a technology diagram to be the most sexy thing, but it's part of explaining why this is so powerful. So the system that we're using, built on this Library Simplified project of simplifying the library experience, relies on 3 different pieces of technology. DPLA is running a marketplace, which is a place where libraries can select and acquire licenses to ebooks and SUNY audiobooks. It works best and is only implemented now with a piece of software we call the Circulation Manager, which is a staff admin portal where the library staff can, once configured, view books from all of the distributors that they source these books from, merge them. So those are the three boxes on the left. You know, the DPLA Exchange content is being served alongside content from other sources. And so in the Library Simplified Circulation Manager, which is the component that a number of library organizations have stepped up to host, including LYRASIS, who's been our closest partner, but also Khalifa, Amigos, and Minitex are all hosting this piece of software for libraries. And that hosting makes this pretty turnkey and easy. The library staff has access to a portal where they can control how these books are ultimately served to their users on their digital shelves, which in 2019 means their apps principally, and to a lesser degree their web presence. And so by doing that, we can really take back control of that entire service stack. And if you can step forward one more time, Samantha, the result, which was that box on the top of the right side, the side that faces users, is these books are all in SimplyE. So SimplyE is the app, the native iOS and Android apps that came out of this project at NYPL, still hosted by NYPL and principally driven by NYPL, but with growing contributions from those other partners I just mentioned. And within the app, you can not only get to NYPL's books, you can get to a couple collections of free open books, both the DPLA collection and the larger SimplyE collection. And you can then read those books in 2 clicks. With these open books, it's really one. You pick it and you read it. So if anyone is interested in this space, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then I think playing with an app for 5 minutes is worth 10,000 words compared in terms of how it performs. And you can see, unlike other apps, without logging in at all, you can go ahead and see the libraries that are in it and their specific catalogs. So you can browse through, and when you're prompted to borrow a book, you need to enter a library card. And in this way, we can bring together libraries from all over the country and put them in one library-owned and library-driven app. Partners like Amigos are building out the ability to let individual libraries make this even more closely aligned with their own brands. And ultimately, we can share in delivering ebooks to our patrons, I think, in both a more satisfying way and a way that will have much more impact because we can drive a lot more access. So note these horizontal rows of book covers. One of the most powerful aspects of this is, again, for the first time, libraries can control that. So where in most of the vendor-provided applications, you'd be seeing by default the most popular books at the top, and the result would be that you'd only tend to find books that are already checked out. Here, even in the bestsellers that you see on the left in the top of the New York Public Library SimplyE instance, those are available bestsellers. And what we've seen is that fewer than 1 in 3 library borrowers ever hit the search box. Most of them are looking for something they can borrow from the library. So the result is that libraries can circulate more of their existing collections and have more impact on access. And that is, I think, a good point to pass this to Tony Agee to talk more about NYPL's work on SimplyE and the rest of the platform.
So thank you, Micah. And I have to be honest, Micah's done most of the heavy lifting, so I'll just come straight at that. I think the essential reason why SimplyE exists at all, back in 2014, the distribution of ebooks through public libraries was dominated by a monopoly vendor. Now, over the past 4 years, SimplyE project has created a platform where the providers of books, whether they're for profit or otherwise, can compete to license ebooks to public libraries. Competition now happens on the basis of price or selection and also licensing models, which I think Micah touched on quite a lot. Ultimately, this expands the selection with the potential to increase diversity of ebooks that we offer, and hopefully, over time, even start thinking about bringing prices down to libraries once we have enough critical mass, once enough of us are using them, and once we've really managed to get the power of organisations like the DPLA Exchange really in a position where they can broker and negotiate on our behalf. So in the past, the vendor was essentially delivering the books directly to the library patrons. With SimplyE, the library now can take back control of that vital relationship. And in combination with the DPLA Exchange, it provides a full library-centric platform and an open market for purchasing and delivering ebooks to patrons without us having to rely on for-profit proprietary solutions. So here we are in 2019, and the monopoly vendor still has a dominant place, that's true, but because of SimplyE, other vendors can now compete on something like a level playing field. In addition, small specialized vendors, for example, Plimpton, can now sell to libraries with at least a realistic chance of getting their books read. So that kind of, the key to this, just keep coming back to it, it's this kind of importance of restating the primacy of the relationship between the library and the librarian in particular, and the patron. Because the incentive of a commercial vendor is going to be always to get a library to simply spend more money on licenses. Whereas, from my experience, the incentive of a library is always to help people with reading more relevant, more helpful books, and to broaden the base of people who will read. And for Newark Public Library in particular, that is targeting low reading teens. So what we're building, we've built 2 mobile applications called SimplyE, one for each of the major mobile platforms. So that's for iOS and Android. The mobile application is responsible for the patron's experience from everything from choosing a library, logging in with their library card. In fact, SimplyE will, once the patron downloads the app from the App Store, it comes preloaded with books from the DPLA, so that they're reading from the moment they get it. And then the app has the capacity to search for a library itself, and it can even issue, with the permission of the library, a digital library card right there and then, and hook them directly into their library so they can start to browse or search the library's collection. The app will allow them obviously to borrow a book, right through from reading, bookmarking, and even to the point where they can return the book. It's worth saying this is an open source project. It's an open source platform. We invite people to contribute to that. There could be opportunities for us maybe to discuss that in more detail. We're currently working with a number of partner libraries all over the country to help them to adopt SimplyE for their libraries. And New York Public Library's goal, I guess, in partnership with the DPLA and other partner libraries, is to make this the best possible, the most robust solution and platform that's owned and managed by libraries everywhere around the globe. Why I think this is important, I suppose trying to think about how I can sum this up without wanting to be too hyperbolic. There's a risk that the way that the vendors have positioned themselves is that we have become essentially customer acquisition programs for commercial vendors. They own literally everything, right up to the relationship with the patron. They make the selections of the books, and they kind of, all we do is we hand over patrons to them and pick up the check at the end. And the concern is that not just that they're removing the library, but they're removing the librarian. And there's no role for the librarian in the way the vendors have set their propositions up. And I'd say if there's one alarm bell in my mind that is ringing, it's when I saw one of the vendors offer what they called an instant digital library card, which meant that it was one stage even further than us handing over our patrons to the vendors, but the vendor was actually going out and canvassing for the patrons themselves, essentially saying, send us your telephone number and we will issue you with a digital card. We'll issue that for you. We'll hook you into a library. And essentially, we'll just get the library to pay the bill for whatever you consume at the end of the period. My real worry is, bad as that is, and that sounds terrible, they're only one phone call away from ringing up the mayor of New York and saying, we can cut out the library completely. If you just pay the money straight to us, we'll deal with the whole thing. And I think that kind of horrific vision of us being completely removed from the reading environment is something that we have worked hard as we can to try and resist. So with that kind of doomsday scenario, I'm now going to hand over to Michael.
Thank you so much, Tony. And I'd like to say thank you to you, to CEO of NYPL, Tony Marks, and for your team for development on this app, which allows even small and relatively rural libraries like mine to have the power that it offers. I call it the one app to rule them all. It is the one that allows you to get to so many places only by visiting the one. I am a project manager here in Maryland, as well as being the director of my library, to launch the app statewide, and so far 10 of 24 libraries are live. We're working with LYRASIS. If you do not have the technical expertise to do it yourself, there are a number of vendors, including Amigos and LYRASIS, who will deploy for you. We're also working with LYRASIS on a couple of sort of enhancements. One's a web version. Currently, when you go to the app, all you see is your library's content. What we're hoping to do is, when you would go to a link from a library website that says see our ebooks, that you would see nothing but the content. You wouldn't see go to this vendor, go to that vendor, here's our other vendor. All you would see would be what you had available. We're also working with them on a marketing tool to try to help libraries launch SimplyE. We view DPLA Exchange as an important and integral part of this project, and there's a number of reasons why. The first is that they are offering some unique content that I'm not finding on other vendors, and obviously the more we can offer of interest to our users, the better off we are. They have recently launched with BiblioBoards the Indie Author Project, and if you're not familiar with that, it is curated titles from Library Journal, the American Library Association, a number of other sources who look at independently published ebooks and talk about ones that are well worth libraries having. And it provides unique access, especially to local authors, and I view that as an important development in libraries connecting to their local authors and offering local content. It's not ebooks, it is audiobooks, and I hope you're familiar with the fact that those are exceptionally hot in libraries right now. And the Exchange is now going to begin offering audiobooks. So we're very excited about that possibility. Those audiobooks will launch through SimplyE. So once again, one source to give you access to everything. Could we go to the next slide for just a second? All right, so there is unique ebook content here as well, because they work with different vendors, often smaller publishers. So the first search I ever did was just to find some unique content from Maryland. And the first order I ever made was small. I've ordered a lot since then, was 13 titles. 7 of those were unique to DPLA. I could not get them from our statewide vendor. So that is proving to be an excellent way to find new and interesting titles for us. Back one slide, please. Thank you. Micah already mentioned the DPLA Open Bookshelf, high quality EPUB titles. There's a lot of classic titles there, but there's other titles as well. For example, there's some open textbooks that are very helpful for high school and even college students to see there. So once again, we're looking at just some unique content. And in this case, it's available for free and openly to all. Just another great thing to offer to your library readers. Another thing that we are really grateful for, and Micah did mention this, is some advocacy for innovative licensing. I don't know if we can go out and look at that link or not. I don't want to mess up the presentation. I can just tell you about it. Workman Publishing is offering a license at point of licensing with one of 2 options. You can get 1 copy, 1 user perpetual access on their titles, or you can buy on a metered access 40 titles per license. That's important because there's no other source that is really offering that, none of the big 5 certainly, and no single model suits libraries right now. Either you buy a lot of 1 copy, 1 user, and you're left with them when the title's not popular, or you're constantly running through titles and having to reorder. So I think that that advocacy just for innovative licensing, which I hope we're going to be able to build on and have even larger publishers begin to adopt, is extremely important. Just the final point I'd like to make, Tony's already made far more eloquently than I have, but I think it's important that we're building an exchange by libraries for libraries, so that we don't have vendors marketing to our people directly, thinking that they are the ones who are providing content. If you fire up just one vendor and it's a commercial vendor and you leave your library space to go there, you might confuse your users, or they might think, hey, that's what the library is. It's not our local institution providing us content. So those are the main reasons why we are interested in working with DPLA and with LYRASIS on this project. I'm going to turn it over to Valerie.
Next slide, thank you. Well, I appreciate the chance to talk to you about what we're doing here in Minnesota. You know, 4 or 5 years ago, the State Library and Minitex called together librarians from around the state, and we asked them, what do they want to see in a statewide ebook collection? And mirroring the language that my fellow panelists have used today, they basically said they wanted to get control of their ebooks. This was prior to the existence of the DPLA Exchange. So we went looking for a platform that would allow us to own our ebooks and make them available as barrier-free as possible. So 3 years ago, on the BiblioBoard platform, we launched Ebooks Minnesota, and last year we rolled out the extremely popular Ebooks Minnesota for Schools. And this is geolocated. If you are in Minnesota, you never have to create an account. You can read any book in the system at any time. There's no holds, there's no checkouts. You can keep the book for as long as you want. And we own all of these titles. We have literally physical copies of these titles stored on our servers. So the problem, though, was that meant that our public and academic libraries had their own ebook collections, and now there was yet another app and another statewide, another place for people to go with ebooks. So when we heard about what New York Public Library was doing with SimplyE, we jumped on the bandwagon, and with the help of IMLS, we picked up a grant to help create the ability in SimplyE to not only link your collections by the standalone ebook vendors, Overdrive, Biblioteca, and Access 360, but we also wanted to link in consortia collections. And so the work we've done on that IMLS grant has achieved that. And we have, at the moment, one public library in Minnesota up and running this system that has linked in a Biblioteca system, an Access 360 system, and Ebooks Minnesota. And they can, and their patrons only have to go to one location to find all that content. Next slide, please. We focused, our theme on this as we moved along became read local. We were aware, as Tony said, that a lot of the ebook vendors out there were basically pushing the bestsellers, and so the bestsellers were being checked out in droves. Well, incredible content was not being found. So when we built the Ebooks Minnesota collection, we chose to focus on independent publishers, and it turns out that Minnesota has a very healthy collection of publishers. Plus, we are also looking at the national publishers, particularly to add diversity and depth to the collection. A lot of people, when we made this choice to build a collection that does not have bestsellers in it, questioned whether we would be successful. I feel 3 years out that we can say we have been extraordinarily successful with, now remember, the state of Minnesota's population would fit in New York City's population like fourfold, but within our low populated state, we've had 90,000 books opened and read with an 83% growth. So for those of you who are thinking about the exchange and are wondering whether going the independent route can be successful. We've got 3 years of experience to tell you that it can. Next slide, please. Another feature of Minitex is that we work with DPLA on the Minnesota Digital Library. So the Minnesota Digital Library is a collection of digital objects about the state of Minnesota. And through this project, one of the things that we started discovering is that there are just absolutely fascinating individual authors writing local histories, writing family histories about Minnesota. It's sort of that unique content that Michael was talking about that can't be found anywhere else. We also knew that there were 1 million self-published books, according to Bowker, released in 2008, 2017, 2018. So we decided that if we're going to build a platform that's focusing on the individual and the unique, that we had to figure out how to get in our local authors. And so we created this joint public academic project called the Minnesota Library Publishing Project, which uses Pressbooks as a platform for authors to create titles. Next slide, please. Our branding to the public is Minnesota Writes, Minnesota Reads. This again uses Bibliolab's platform, and as Michael was talking about, this is connected into the Indie Author Project. So if you click on that create link on our website, it takes you to Pressbooks, where we have a geolocated system, which means that all you have to be is in the state of Minnesota, and you can immediately start creating a book project. Excuse me. In 18 months, we have had a stunning 490 book projects started with 579 authors from around the state. This year we did our first statewide, last year we did our first statewide author contest, and we had 101 submissions into that contest. Once a book is created, you use the share button, and that will take you, that will help an author load their books into Indie Minnesota and also into the nationwide Indie author collection, which is available through the DPLA Exchange. And then if you click on the read button, you can, and we have academic and public libraries throughout the state that are making these books available. So you can either read Minnesota authors or Indie authors from around the country. And it has given us a home for those books that were the local histories, the Minnesota-centric titles, which help support our Minnesota Digital Library. Next slide, please. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about was why I think it's worked so well here in Minnesota. Part of the reason is that it is a collaborative project. Public and academic libraries are working together. But I think one of the real reasons this has all been so successful is because we bring the community together. Many people who work on self-publishing or indie or independent projects, they are by themselves. They are the only person in their library who is responsible for that work. We have created communities of interest where people can share ideas, learn from each other, get energy by what's happening within the community. So I think if any of you out there are considering doing this work in a consortial, statewide, large system process, I highly encourage you to add in a component where you have a high touch factor for the staff who are working on this area. And with that, I will pass the gavel to Michelle.
Thank you, Valerie. Can you advance the slide? There you are. So a really impressive set of projects and speakers that we've heard of today, and really emphasizing the point why it is important, and I feel almost imperative for libraries to have control of the experience they deliver to their patrons and to not rely on for-profit vendors in siloed systems to do that. And I feel like our collaboration with the partners here today, as well as with several others that aren't on the presentation today, really advance the work that DPLA is interested in, which is providing technology throughout to help accelerate relationships in the digital world for libraries. So we're very excited about that work. If you want to know on the slide right here, if you want to get involved or learn more about the Exchange, Open Bookshelf, or really anything you heard about today, you want to get connected with the right projects and people, you can email us at ebooks@dp.la. If you want to find out more about the DPLA specific projects, you can go to ebooks.dp.la. And then of course we have an ebooks email list. Next slide, please. And if you're not aware, April 17th and 18th, we will be in Chicago at the Chicago Public Library. We are really excited. We will be featuring presentations from several keynotes on the topics of ebooks, as well as innovation and technology, as well as our cultural heritage work. So it will be an opportunity to look at all of the work our partners are doing in all three of those areas. So the link to register is there, and we hope to see many of you there. And the program is just getting ready for publication and will be out in the next week, if not days. So look for that as well. And lastly, much of this work, at least in the beginning stages, was funded by IMLS and LSTA grants. So we want to also put a special shout out and thanks to our IMLS and LSTA grant funders, because that was really the start of many of these projects for everybody. Okay, and with that, I would like to open it up for questions. So if you can put your question into the chat, I will then read it, and then one of us on the panel will be able to answer it. Okay, first question. How do these products work with e-ink readers, such as Paperwhite?
This is Micah. They don't. Those are the only devices that require the Amazon proprietary format, which so far only Overdrive has permission from them to distribute. So luckily, when libraries look at the Amazon format consumption from their ebook vendors, we believe a lot of that, potentially 90% of it, is people using the Kindle app on an iPad or an Android device. But the Paperwhite devices you're asking about specifically can only serve Amazon format files. So they don't work. Now, one other mitigating factor for libraries.
Just a quick addition to that. Kindle Fire devices can get access to this content through the app. It's the Paperwhite and devices like that that are not able to.
I was going to say, one way we mitigated this, I think, mitigated the impact of this on Paperwhite users is that, you know, at this point in the transition, libraries are still generally leaving like an Overdrive collection still available. Or at least, you know, Tony could speak to this, but at NYPL, there's still use on Overdrive for people that are attached to it. And in parallel, SimplyE is offered. Over time, there's been a migration in that direction. And that's one of the use cases that, you know, they have literally no one else is legally permitted to solve for right now.
Great. Okay, the next question. Are the book titles on the DPLA Exchange hosted online to be read through the browser, or can they be downloaded, or can they only be downloaded into the SimplyE app?
Anybody want to take that one?
Micah, you want to take that?
I mean, the answer is they can be read on any device that can read an EPUB, but Micah, you want to take that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, they are downloaded into the app. I mean, in terms of streaming on the browser is in progress. There too, the limitation is a little bit about DRM. I'm not sure there's any use case for which, only streaming in the browser enables, that SimplyE is limited by virtue of downloading. I think the fact that you tend to download the book is mostly because, first of all, book files are still pretty small. So compared to device storage, it's not really a problem to download it. And then you'll still have it when you get on the subway, when you get on the airplane. So once you've selected it from the catalog, that offline remains available. I don't know if I fully answered that question or if others want to jump in, but.
Yeah, I think I'll jump in. The books from the Exchange could be downloaded to other devices. SimplyE, what the benefit is that if a library is buying books from the Exchange and buying books from Overdrive and buying books from Biblioteca, they can all be seen through the SimplyE app. And you're not sending users to multiple apps to see the books.
Yes, I'm right. That's right. I'm sorry if I focus too much on the technical aspects of how SimplyE works. The books in the Exchange are like, in some ways, the goal of this is to disconnect the pieces. So if a library chooses to, you can mix and match the pieces. So the books from the Exchange could be read in another app for sure. That's not how any of our pilots are currently deploying it, because right now they're all people that are using SimplyE. But there's no technical limitation, and you could kind of mix. So does that make sense to that question? Hopefully in chat you can let us know if we got that one.
But also, I mean, the whole purpose of this open source and communal project is that we collectively will do whatever we want to do. So if the point when we want to develop other devices, other ways of doing things, whether it's on the web, whatever, we will do that. We can do that. So we can do anything we want to do.
Okay, next question. What will ultimately be a library's cost? We are part of a digital consortium to a big vendor, and the potential of losing the large investment both in the content and funding we've already made would be hard to swallow. How can we recover from that? Or is this something we would have to let go before we can commit to this idea?
No, I don't think you need to let go of any collections. So first of all, in the near term, what all the libraries deploying this are doing is to build a collection in the DPLA Exchange, make it available in combination with their existing collections, and serve that for a while. Now, that doesn't resolve the issue you highlight of the platform fee to the existing vendor, but you shouldn't lose any of the content. So, there's been a number of migrations. I think the first was done by Queen's Library from Overdrive to Baker and Taylor. But actually at ALA midwinter, Massachusetts Library System, Steve Spahn reported out in depth on their migration from, I think they moved from Baker and Taylor to Overdrive, so the reverse, and they kept 99% of their content. They had a couple of idiosyncratic publishers. I know in the case of the Queen's migration, they had a couple of audiobook publishers. So, and so there's kind of a two-step process. What libraries would typically hopefully do is launch the SimplyE app and the new elements of the collection in parallel, begin migrating users, and then if you wanted to completely ramp down that platform support as a host, then the DPLA Exchange would accept that transfer without a cost, which has been the industry standard, between the other ebook distributors. So there shouldn't be any sort of hard cost in that sense, and you shouldn't have to lose those collections, except for maybe there could be a couple of idiosyncratic vendors or publishers rather that refuse to give permission to that.
Okay, let's move on to the next question because we have lots of questions here. Okay, next question. So does the DPLA Exchange have an API for the metadata? This is to add it to our OPAC.
Yes, this is something we've just been expanding, including like building out the link to the 856 field in the OPAC, so that you can link directly to a web URL for the book. But yes, that's and I think Michael talked a little bit about some further work they're doing on web discoverability.
And then I have another question, which is really the same answer, but maybe expanded. Does the distribution setup software provide MARC records for a participating library's ILS?
Again, this is a new recent addition that DPLA has been adding. So we've just built a MARC record generator, which we're testing in depth with Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh, and one of the Minnesota libraries in Hennepin has been giving feedback on that. So yes, we do generate MARC records. We think they're really good, except for Library of Congress subject heading. But we may even be able to get to the point where they're as good as the ones libraries typically buy. We're real close to that, we think.
Okay, next
We'd
question.
love your feedback on our MARC records if you want to look at them.
Next question. I'm sorry to ask Michael to repeat information he's already gone over, but audiobooks really perked my ears. Missed some of the crucial information. What is the timeline for full audiobook implementation from all publishers on SimplyE?
Okay, quick, first a clarification. It's actually from the providing vendors and not the publishers. I'm sure the publishers don't care. So currently in SimplyE, one can get Biblioteca Cloud Library, and I'm listening to one right now. We can get Baker & Taylor's Access 360, that's in place. Baker & Taylor need to make one addition. Next is RB Digital. The final piece we're working on in terms of the larger vendors is Overdrive. Overdrive has tentatively committed, but not absolutely come on board. They want to see proof that it's working with other vendors. Negotiations with them are ongoing. We think that in time, especially if a DPLA, for example, is offering audiobooks through the app, that they will feel it important to allow us access as well. But if you're an Overdrive customer and wouldn't mind saying you'd really like to see them move with us, it would be greatly appreciated. And if there's further questions, I'm happy to talk about it.
And just to build on that DPLA Exchange, we have been working hard to get audiobooks into SimplyE and should have a full catalog of audiobooks, hoping by this summer. Next question, can out-of-print books become part of these collections?
So I can speak a little bit to this. The answer is essentially yes. So in a different project that we've been working on at NYPL, but we've also now started to include DPLA in those conversations. We've been working with the Authors Guild and a number of other organisations to start to think about how we can bring back into circulation, I guess, out of print, books that are out of print. The two challenges, some of them out of print are in the public domain, and so that is just a matter of us converting those into a format that can be accessed either through the app. I mean, they're obviously viewable on the web as they are. And the second is to deal with those much harder ones, which are the ones that are still in copyright but out of print. And that's the project that we're working on with the Authors Guild. And we have literally just done our first two titles where we have gone right through the process of acquiring the rights to republish them, turn them into EPUBs and put them into SimplyE. So kind of watch this space, but there is very good progress, and we're very confident that we won't only be including books that are commercially available, but also books that are either in the public domain or those trickier books that are still in copyright but out of print.
And just to build on that, there are books that are out of print but available in SimplyE today through the Open Bookshelf collection as well as the SimplyE collection, and you can access them right now on the app. Any additional questions?
I'd just jump in, this is Micah, to say one sort of thanks and shout out and request, which is, you know, Michael mentioned the importance of libraries who are ultimately, you know, the customers talking to their providers about integrating with this system. And, you know, again, that doesn't mean them doing much except for providing this API, or better yet, feed that's well defined. And I just wanted to give everyone a reminder that if you care about seeing this work go forward, the starting point is interoperability between these systems and distributors providing those APIs. And the leader of that work has really been, in my mind, one of the most important leaders, and the focal point that has driven that is an organization called Readers First, which was started at NYPL with partners at that time in Seattle and Boston. Were also frustrated by the inability to do this, and which Michael Blackwell now leads and has taken really impressive ownership of over the last couple of years and had it thrive. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to folks that if you care about that fight, whether or not you're doing this now, if there's a vendor that you hope someday in the next years, you know, on the academic side, to be able to integrate, then keeping in your conversations with them the importance of interoperability and that they support SimplyE integration, is really important. And it's something you can do without spending any money and deploying any technology that can really help the effort. And if you're interested in talking more about that, I would encourage you to contact us about how to join the Readers First advocacy group.
Great point. Okay, I have another question. Will DPLA consider folding in access to content from OpenStack into SimplyE? I'm not familiar with OpenStack.
Yeah, OpenStack is there. Those are some of the open textbook that Michael mentioned that are in the open bookshelf. So the best of OpenStacks is there. Not everything OpenStacks has made is an EPUB, and that's come largely actually through, I don't know if it's Minitext or the University of Minnesota, but through Valerie's help connecting us in terms of University of Minnesota is integrated with OpenStacks, and together they are pulling together the best open textbooks. I don't know if you want to build on that, Valerie, in terms of open textbooks.
Yeah. What I wanted to say is we have, using our IMLS funds, we have programmed in the ability to read PDF files in SimplyE. And at some point in the future, NYPL will be launching that functionality into the app. And so we'll not just have both the open textbook and the OpenStax textbooks that are EPUB, but we will also be making a stream for the PDF files as well, which I think is going to make it probably one of the best places to find textbooks in the country.
And that'll be the rest of OpenStax.
Right, the PDF files.
Great. Okay, I have another question. I might have missed this, but is there a fee for libraries to integrate with SimplyE? You mentioned open source, but this sounds like a lot of for free. So I will answer that in part. So the software is available open source. The part that libraries have to run on their own if they want to is the library simplified software. There are, though, hosting providers that will run that for you for a fee, but you can also run it on your own. That is a choice every individual library would make on their own.
Yeah, so I just try and I don't want to overcomplicate things, but there's no fees, but there are costs. This is free. This is a free environment, a free platform. There's no we don't charge anything. We don't charge anything for anything. There's no licenses, nothing. But obviously there are costs. The costs of hosting and the costs of serving the books. I don't know if that's made it more complicated, but it is essentially free.
Yeah, and I guess I'll add to that. There's a cost of participation. So this is a community that is supporting the open source. And so if you integrate this into your library, you're expected to participate at some level, whether that's as a user or with documentation or what have you. But that's where we're working towards, so that we can grow the community and we can all contribute in effective manner.
We in Maryland did not have anybody with the time and expertise to launch, but we did get a grant to do this. I think that granting is an excellent way to get involved, and so at no cost to the libraries. Now, yes, there's a cost to have the vendor do the deployment, and if anybody wants to email me, I'll happily talk to you about that more.
Great, so I don't see any other questions. If anybody has additional questions that they think of after the webinar, if they want to get involved, please email ebooks@dp.la, and we will make sure that your request gets funneled to the right person.
There is a question, Michelle. My library isn't on the list of libraries in SimplyE. What can I do to get involved? So I don't know, that kind of speaks to the point about deploying Library Simplified. I wonder if you were flipping back to that page for 1 second.
I was just saying they could email the
email
ebooks.
us. Okay, sure.
Yeah, and we would funnel it to the right person. That's why I said that. Okay, thanks. Okay, so I want to really thank everybody for participating today. We had great attendance and a great lineup of panelists. If you need any more information, please email us, as I said, ebooks@dp.la, and we hope to see many of you at the fest. So thanks again, and have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.